It participants will be less in the short in a
Please,
minute.
can you? Okay, it's fine.
I'm letting them in. It's 11.
Okay, it's fine. Hello, good morning, good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Woo, it's the Blue Box session. I am excited to have everyone on the call this morning, and I am sure you must really be excited to see my face this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. It's morning here. Sorry about that. Oh, but it's such a pleasure to have you on the call. And guess what? I think it's time I say congratulations to you for making it to our very first Blue Box session. Woo! It's such a pleasure to meet you, Temi Tope. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ephraim, Gadi. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Uche Goodness, and I would be your host this morning. And I am very sure that you came with an appetite full of expectations to learn and to grow, to network. And just sit back. We have all of that in stock for you this morning. So my name is Uche Goodness, and I'll be your host this morning. Today, I think I had introduced myself enough. So I would love to meet you all. I would love to meet everyone on the call. So if you are just joining us, Zaomi, I can see your greetings. Thank you. If you are just joining us, let us meet you in the chat box. Tell us your name. Tell us where you are joining us from. Tell us your creative sector, and we would also love to know what creative journey has been like so far. Has it been a roller coaster? Has it been a walking park, a bed of roses for you? And yeah, let's know what the creative journey has been for you as well. So can we take it this way? Hello, good morning or good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Timmy Tope, and I am in fashion illustration. My creative journey has been beautiful, insightful, and all of that. So let's meet you, and I will definitely be in the chat box to read out how it has been for everyone. Oh, sorry. Zelmi said, "Good morning, everyone." Anthony, we see you. Good morning, Anthony. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. If you can hear me, let's meet you in the chat box. You let us know your name. You let us know where you are joining us from. Are you joining from Nigeria? Are you joining from Ghana? Are you joining from Morocco? Are you joining from Cameroon? And also let us know your creative sector. And when you've done that, we would love to know a bit about your story. How has your creative ride been? Good morning, peace. Thank you so much, Christy Aguga, a lover of anything handcraft. Oh, I love that. It speaks passion. It speaks passion, it speaks creativity, and fashion designer from Abuja, Nigeria. Good morning. I think it's in a is this Inakwana from Abuja, yeah. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you, Doris. It's a pleasure to meet you, everyone on the call. Thank you so much for joining us. And I am so happy, in fact, particularly thrilled to have you in our first Blue Box session, and I am sure you are here to learn. So let's hit the ground running. Perhaps, okay, good morning and all participants. Oh, good to meet you from Seychelles, Jerina. Thank you so much for joining the call. So today our topic is intellectual property protection, protecting your um, sorry, protecting your brand. And while you wait, try and ensure that you have a stable internet connectivity so you don't miss out on anything. And of course, ensure you are joining. Sorry about that. Ensure you introduce yourself in the chat box. Let's meet you. We want to know your name. You want to know your sector. You want to know where you are joining us from, and we want to also know how the journey has been for you. So introduce yourself in the chat box while you wait. And if you can, turn on your camera. We want to see your beautiful face as much as you're seeing mine, and ask your questions in the chats. If you observed your is while joining, you are muted while joining, so you are not able to unmute yourself. So during the question session, during the training session, during the introduction session, feel free to use the chat, but yeah, the chat section and participate actively. We want to also hear from you. Tell us how the journey has been. Tell us how the story has been. Tell us if you have any question, if there's any aha moment in the course of the conversation this morning. Do well to use the chat box and make those expressions. So this morning we are having a diverse audience, but we'll be translating in French. So if you are on the call, this is how you choose a language on Zoom. So at the base of your screen, if you are using a laptop device or your phone, you would see this icons. Scroll to the interpretation icon, then to load up the pop-up window. Once the pop-up window is loaded up, pick the French language. Apologies for the Portuguese and Arabic. We won't be having that for this session. But yeah, for Francophone audience, we've got you. So feel free to use the interpretation icon, select the French language as your preferred language, and then mute the original audio to avoid interference. If you do not mute the original audio, you'll be hearing two voices. One is mine, and the other would be with that of Francis, our French translator. And of course, so I think we'll be wondering what's BlueBox session, what's creative innovation practice by ICT Africa like. So I must acknowledge that it's really been a beautiful ride for us at ICT Africa, betting this initiative for creatives across Africa. But yeah, how ICT Africa is a leading development consulting advisory firm with core expertise in implementing human capital research projects in Africa. So ICT Africa within the international development space, the higher education space, digital innovation, creative entrepreneurship space. So over the years, we have spearheaded initiatives to strengthen Africa creatives through the Fashionomics Africa training program that implemented by ICT Africa. 3,000 and even over 3,000 creatives across about 45 African countries. We have equipped them with business skills, creative skills needed to thrive. Thank you so much. For you. So just be patient with us. We are coming. And of course, to the business of the day. I'm sure you all are waiting. So I wanted to give a story before this business of the day. But before, I think because of our time, we'll just hit the nail on the head. Our facilitator of the day is Bernice Asen. Bernice is a lawyer that specializes in startup law, intellectual property, and fashion law. She's the founder and lead counsel at Cardinal Counsel, where she supports fashion creatives and professionals by providing legal insights and advocacy. She has over 6 years of experience in law and over 9 years in the fashion industry. Whoops! She bridges the gap between law, policy, and innovation. Bernice is also the founder of the Fashion Law Institute, Africa's first institution, dedicated to the intersection of law and fashion. Venice has worked with numerous startups. She has empowered them, mentored them, educated them, and helped them establish good legal frameworks. Bernice is a lot for everybody. She's a lot in the ecosystem. But for us this morning, she's our pretty facilitator. And the next voice you would be hearing is no other than Bernice's voice. If you are excited to have Bernice on the call, if you are happy to have Bernice on the call, can we welcome her in the chat box? Hi, Bernice. Good morning.
My goodness, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction.
We are pumped to have you in the session. Good morning, Bernice.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Wow. Just going through the chats. Thank you so much for having me, ICT Africa. I'm super excited. Every single time that I have to talk about one of my favorite things, that's fashion law, talk to designers about the legal aspect of the fashion industry, I'm always excited, always, because it's one of the areas that I believe has been neglected for a very long time. So having us having this session, I think really is an amazing idea. Thank you so much, ICT, for putting all of this together. Right. So yeah, without further ado, I'll just, share my slides. Okay. Let me know when you can. All right. Okay. Hello, goodness. Just let me know if you can see it now.
Yes. So it's up and it's clear.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay. So to oh, wow. Past 7. All right, we'll just start. Right. So I'll be discussing today intellectual property in fashion, protecting your designs and brands. As a fashion lawyer, one of the major questions that I have from fashion designers is, how do I protect my design? I mean, with counterfeiting happening across the continent and internationally, globally, being a major problem. One of the things that designers and a lot of fashion companies and professionals want to do is they want to protect their creation, right? And I always like to say, because one of the reasons why I identify as fashion lawyer, it's not because I can just say, oh, I'm an IP lawyer, was because one of the things we noticed in the space was the fashion industry, right? So they just, lump everything together with the creative industry. So the fashion industry is sort of like lagging behind because, well, the fashion industry is very unique, right? The kind of laws that is required to protect the average designer creative sector, if you look at it, for example, there are over, I think, 45 sectors in the creative economy, and the fashion industry is part of it. And if you look at it, only the fashion industry and probably art still have physical economy. You can see that they can sing, they can shoot videos, and that is just about it. For the fashion industry, you would have to do all of those things and still create the shores of the creator's, country. That obviously brings a lot of issues because we still have physical product that has to be moved from one person to the other, right? I mean, there's a lot of laws that you have to think about. So, but today we'll be talking about solely how you can protect your designs. Now we'll be discussing the different types of IP that's available for fashion designers and brands. We'll be talking about how to protect your brand names, logo, designs, and campaigns. We'll also be talking about the regional specific registration that is available on a Pan-African level. We'll also be talking about contracts that you can use to circumvent, because I mean, IP, it's not that you can protect your IP, right? How you can also build an IP strategy on the African continent and also protecting fashion tech innovation, because there's a lot of innovation that is happening in the fashion industry that needs to be protected. Also, trade secret is also important. So Fashion Law Institute is the very first institution dedicated to the fashion industry on the African continent. And we are dedicated to, and we do this by education, advocacy, and community. Basically, we provide knowledge around fashion and the legal aspect of it. So we are seeing right now that the African fashion industry is getting a lot of global attention. We see that Lagos, Dakar, Cape Town, Accra are being known for the creative work that they put out there in terms of their fashion history, their culture, and craftsmanship. All of these things really beautiful, but has brought about conversations around how that creators can monetize, protect, and also monetize their idea, because you see that there's creativity behind every work that's put out there. It's a lot of research and development that goes on in the fashion industry to come up with something that people love and want to be associated with. So that is one of the reasons why intellectual property is one of the areas that is taking center stage. Now, what is intellectual property? Intellectual property refers to.
Hi, Bernice.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Can you please put your slide in the presenter view so that, because we're training to see them. Put it on slideshow so that it will be visible to everyone. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, it's not moving.
Okay, sorry about that. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay,
so we'll share the slides after the session so everybody will be able to benefit from it. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem I'm having with. Okay. Okay, so you can see it clearly now, the screens.
Sweet and perfect. Thank you.
Okay, amazing. So intellectual property is basically the creation of your mind. So once you come up with a particular idea and you've put it in a particular medium, that's your intellectual property, especially when it is original, right? Or a modification of something that's already, in existence. So now the importance of IP, the reason why people came up with, oh, let's have something like the IP law is because there was need to protect and preserve the creations of the mind by the person who's creating that. So, for example, if I'm creating an idea and I'm not able to invest back into, that particular research purpose, that creation process, it means that I will obviously not be able to create. So for us to incentivize people to create, there was need to come up with the intellectual property law. So for us to prevent people diluting your brand, counterfeiting, and also enable you to expand, because once you are able to monetize your IP protection, just even if you think about it, if you are not able to protect your idea, every other person can, have access to that, can steal it, right? So it loses that value, that resale value. It loses the ability to generate any sort of income for you. So there's so many reasons why, these are the reasons why intellectual property law exists in the fashion industry, to help preserve the brand's identity, to encourage innovation, to prevent counterfeiting, and also enable you to expand internationally. So there are various types of IPs that exist in fashion. The very first one, and for me, I feel like the most important, is the trademark. The next is copyright, right? And copyright would protect your artistic work. There's also industrial design that protects the visual appearance of a particular product. There is trade secrets, which is rarely talked about, but I think it's very important, and also patents. In the coming slides, I'll be going in depth into all of those. So the very first one is the copyright law. The copyright law is basically the most controversial aspect of the fashion industry. And that's because across the African continent, we have really seen that the laws that have been enacted in various areas did not take cognizance of the peculiarity of the fashion industry. However, what we have across the various countries from Nigeria to Ghana, South Africa, still can protect certain aspects of your creation. So copyright is the level of protection that exists and gives you exclusive rights over original work, original patterns, prints, and apparel styles, depending on its interpretation, right? So as long as a work is original and fixed in a particular medium. Now, when we talk about fixed in a particular medium, right, it means you have put it, whether or not it is digital, whether or not it's a soft copy or a hard copy, you decide to say, oh, this is the idea I have in my mind, and I'm going to create it out of my mind and put it in a particular place. A typical example is when you think about a design and you're able to make modifications to it and bring it out and turn it into fashion illustrations. That illustrations enjoy what we call copyright and is protected as an artistic work. Now, when you think about textile, this is taking me to the elements or the products that enjoy copyright. So when you look at textile prints and surface designs and patterns, those things enjoy copyright protection as artistic work. So just the way that you look at certain brands like Banke Coco of a Nigerian fashion brand, if you look at it, they have a very particular way of designing their textile, right? You would see that it is sort of unique. That can enjoy copyright. Your fashion illustrations too, when you think about an idea and you put it into paper or you design it on the software, that is you putting it in a fixed medium and you can enjoy copyright. Artistic work, generally, you would see that there are a lot of laws across the African continent and also internationally that refers to certain fashion pieces as artistic work. Because of the creativity that goes into that work, it can be protected as an artistic work. And that's because sometimes, right, this work is not made to be replicated across board. Somebody is just deciding to create one particular piece, usually couture designs, very exclusive, and you know that, okay, this is it, right? So that enjoys protection as an artistic work. Your campaign photos, for example, when you shoot your different looks and put it up together into a lookbook, that can also, qualify for copyright protection automatically. When you come up with fashion editorials, style guides, all of those things can enjoy copyright. Another thing I would like to chip in, because it's one of the things that I see happen on the African continent that brings a lot of conversation. So when you have a lookbook or not a lookbook, a mood board, for example. So a mood board is something that represents the idea that you have. So you're bringing up different things, different ideas to create a collection, right? Your mood board does not enjoy copyright. Many times I see that designers across Africa want to protect that idea. Your mood board is the idea you have. Usually, your mood board is generated from different things that already enjoy copyright on their own, right? Or they are generated from pictures. They are generated from different elements that are not exactly original to you. So you're bringing them together. You're coming up with a concept. That particular, concept gathering does not exactly enjoy copyright. So when you decide that, oh, I come up with this mood board and I give it to a particular person who is skilled and interprets that and puts that into a tangible format, right? That already enjoys copyright by the person who made and interpreted that design into a physical medium. I'm talking about this because it's something that I see happen. And I'll give, for example, there was a case of Nana Akua Addo, a Ghanaian actress during the AMVCA last year. And she created her designs. But if you look at that particular case, she came up with her idea and she didn't just form a mood board and say, this is what I'm thinking. She created the idea and put that into a fixed medium by designing. She got somebody to design it on a 3D platform or just like a fashion illustration. She interpreted the idea she had in her mind and it was already designed on a particular platform. However, when she approached the designer, she gave the designer everything interpreted. So what the designer had to do, right, was to make that dress. Now, what the designer was doing there was just technical skill, was just sewing, was just tailor services, which anybody can do. There was no creative employment of anything. So that's me trying to draw the distinction. But it's different when you come up with a mood board and you say, oh, this is what I'm thinking. These are the various ideas that I have. And you give it to a designer and that person interprets it and brings it to life. There and then you have decided to allow the person interpret it. So the person automatically is the author of the work, or maybe it can be a collaborative work, right? So what I'm trying to bring out all of this is because there's always a conversation around who owns this work. Was I the person? Copyright, intellectual property does not protect the ideas you have in your mind. It protects the finished work, what you've done, what you've come up with, how you're able to think about it and put it in a fixed medium. Right. A lot of laws, a lot of countries have a lot of restrictions when it comes to copyright law. Generally, you enjoy copyright automatically. Once you create it, you don't have to register. You don't have to do something extra. The reason why a lot of professionals encourage people to register is because once you register, there is an evidence that you own the copyright. There is evidence of registration. And what that means is that when you go to court in a case of an infringement, you can sue for damages. It gives you an added advantage. However, whether or not you register it, your ownership, your authorship, as long as it's properly documented, is automatic. That's copyright. So there's also textile patterns, right? I think I gave examples of this. If you look at this as a designer, once you come up with surface designs, a lot of brands do this. Right now, I would think that it's a major area, and we tell a lot of and encourage a lot of designers go deeply into your fashion. What it is come up with the concept from the scratch. The problem we have is that we see that designers are meeting halfway. They just want to play again, just want to be in the technical tailor area, which of course really affects the intellectual property law that you would enjoy, right? So when you come up with your patterns, when you come up with all of these things, all of this work can automatically enjoy copyright protection. This is just an example. There's a brand, Abebi, they designed their textile. Now, if you look at this closely, you would see that the styles are not necessarily unique because this is a wrap dress, this is ruffles, this is bobo. But the very fact that they design down to the fabric automatically gives them copyright protection. So if I want to make this dress and I copy the exact same thing, they have a right, both in copyright and industrial design, right? Now, one of the limitations of copyright is that copyright, when you decide to duplicate, when you decide to mass produce, a lot of laws restricts, once you decide to mass produce a design, you lose copyright. So that's where your industrial design protection also comes to play, because copyright is not for mass production in fashion particularly, which is one thing that I will just chip in here. This is one of the reasons why I always encourage fashion brands, fashion communities and industries to come together, because that is one of the laws that exists across Africa that makes it difficult for us to enjoy in totality the blessings of copyright, because most laws carry an exception to fashion brands. We say once a fashion brand decides to duplicate, but if you think about it deeply, a lot of fashion brands want to mass produce their products. Why do I lose copyright when I mass produce? And that's why there are layers of protection that you have to use. However, you can still fight for the copyright protection of your designs under, yes, of course, copyright. But once you decide to mass produce it, you lose that, and then that's where other areas can come into play. This is an example. The next one is going to be patterns and technical design. That's industrial design. I like to call industrial design almost like a twin sister of copyright, but the difference is that this is more for people who want to industrially apply their design. So you want to mass produce your fashion product, industrial design is also a way to protect your design. So the visual aspect of your styles, every single thing is protected under industrial design. The problem that we have is that we don't have many people using this law because of how expensive it can be and the process of registration, because the process of registration, you would be required to drop a physical product at usually the IP offices. So sometimes imagine that I spend how much money to make this particular dress and I have to drop a copy at the registry. Sometimes it takes a lot of time, right? And again, one of the problem with this is that most designers want to showcase their designs before they even mass produce it. So there is a fashion weeks and fashion shows. So they want to test to see if people would like it. They want to put it out there for people to place their orders, right? Yeah, so when you do that without registration, you lose the ability to register your industrial design. So what that means is that you get intellectual property protection under industrial design in secrecy. You have to not have put it out there. It has to be something that I come up with and I go and protect it and I put it out there. But usually we see that designers want to come up with it, post it, and then go and maybe protect it. So you have to always be proactive to enjoy this. You have to be the first. You have to put it out. If you put it out there, the truth is there are exceptions. You have 6 months gap to register, but sometimes people forget. So yes, we encourage people to use that. So for the features, everything can enjoy industrial design, can enjoy industrial design protection. If it is original, if it is novel, if it is different from what has been already existent. And to be honest, the barrier is very low to originality in fashion, right? It has to be, although again, we can tell when something is a deviation or a derivative, but we always know when something is original, though it's on public opinion, right? And that's one of the reasons why we encourage designers to protect and enforce their right. Because now the problem we also have with the fashion industry is because of lack of enforcement of rights. We do not have a lot of case laws that we can say this particular design, if you copy it, if you make it, the court will grant you industrial design protection and you get enforcement, things like that. So we encourage a lot of designers to protect and enforce. Don't just say, oh, I'm going to call out this person and that's it. What exactly are you doing behind it? Because it's one thing to register, it's another thing to enforce your rights strictly. And a lot of designers run away from that. So yes, your packaging, and this is with that make me talk about also the beauty industry, because that's also part of it. We have a lot of fashion brands coming up with bags, shoe design, lip gloss, different things like that. If you're coming up with bags, your bags are protected under industrial design. Your jewelries, the design, the structure, all protected under industrial design, but you have to register it. There is also the overlap. So I mentioned before that there is a similarity between copyright and industrial design, because really and truly, they protect almost the same thing: pattern, surface, aesthetics, right? But the difference really is in the mode. One requires protection automatically, or one you get protection automatically, the other you don't. You have to register that, you have to submit, you have to show your designs, you have to show an example before you enjoy protection, right? There's the duration also. Duration under industrial design is shorter, right? But the duration under copyright is longer. It is 50 to 70 years after the death of the person who created the design. So you see that's why we encourage a lot of designers to copyright, do industrial design almost immediately. Your brands. Now, this is very, very important. Trademark is the most important for me, right? As a fashion lawyer, I think it's the most important IP rights you can own as a designer in the fashion industry. Why? Because it is more than just your skill. It's the very fact that you put your blood and sweat into making a particular name popular, that you would sell anything and anybody would buy. If you look at international brands, right, or global brands, you can see that They are not restricted to fashion alone. They're not restricted to beauty alone. They are expanding to what lifestyle, beauty, different beautiful products and sectors that they are, expanding towards. That's because they have protected that brand name and enjoys so much exclusivity that they can stamp a name on it, and people just know that, okay, that's it. They have hotels now. Why? Because there's a brand. There's the exclusivity and level of luxury that their brands command. That's one of the reasons why we encourage a lot of brands to register their trademark. It is what you are investing. Basically, it's like a box that you own, and you're putting every single thing inside pertaining to your business. So imagine that you don't own that box. Somebody else can easily just take it, or somebody else can paint it a different color. So it is very important for you to protect your trademark. Trademark shows the source of a particular product. And trademark can also form your surface design. You would see it in next slides, right? I always tell designers, your brand name is not for your fancy bag or for your labels. Most times people come up with brand names because they want to have takeaway bags, they want to make those fine packaging. That's beautiful, but that's not the only thing your brand name exists for. It is used to build brand equity, to take a market share. And what that means is that you can use it to create anything that people would easily buy. So your brand name, your logos, your symbols, your taglines, your distinctive packaging can also be protected under trademark. But trademark is dicey. So example of trademarks though, you have Andrea Yama, you have Christy Brown from Ghana, you have Ami Dochi Sa. I don't know who knows that, but that's a very popular Kenyan brand. There's also Hanifa from Congo. They're doing amazing, with the product that they are coming up with. But those are very unique trademark that is very peculiar to the African continent. Now, the trademark registration process is quite long. So I always encourage people to start out registering across all the IP offices. It takes 5 stages, even internationally, where their administrative process is solid and put together, it still takes a longer process. So there are 5 stages of the registration of trademark. That's the search, the filing, the examination, the publication, and the certificate issuance. And these stages can cut across over 2 years or more, depending on the country that you are in, depending on, the process you're using. It can take 18 months, 2 years, and you're still there. But the beautiful thing is that your trademark right starts on the date of filing and not the date of your certificate issuance. So if I filed my trademark registrations today, right, and I've done I filed it, it is not when I get the certificate, maybe in 2 years time. It is now that it starts, counting. Except, of course, there is a counter application to say that it's already something similar, which of course you would know by the opposition stage. Now, the different parts of, I'm trying to look for a particular slide. Now, there's a different part of the trademark that is also quite distinct, is the fact that the trademark, we generally on the African continent use the NICE classification for trademark protection. And the NICE classification has 45 classes, right? What that means is that there are various industries that have been identified and grouped into 45 classes. So when you decide to protect your trademark in a particular class, you are only protected in that particular class. You cannot move from that class and say, oh, somebody else, or stop somebody else from using it in a different class or a different industry. Except of course you protect in that industry. So class 25 is the fashion category, right? In the NICE classification. If you register your trademark under class 25, you're protected in the fashion industry. However, there is also the textile industry that's also in a different class. There's also the leather class that is different from class 25 and also textile class. So you have to identify the classes that you fall under, because once you miss your classification, what that means is that you will not be able to stop other people from using your trademark in a different class. So it is very important for you to understand the various classes. I've seen sometimes where fashion brands are projected as fashion brands, but they deal in leather goods heavily. So they have to also be protected in the leather industry. The same thing too, you make fashion products beautiful. However, you design your textile and your apparel, you go deep into that. You have to look for textile and protect it under that particular class. So it's very, very important for you to look into understanding the various classes that exist. There's also innovative fabrics and features. This is one place that is, taking up the fashion industry by storm. That's fashion technology. You'll see that I attached a diagram to break down the fashion technology industry, into various sectors. Now, at the top of it, you have e-commerce. E-commerce is what it is. We have a lot of tech guys doing amazing in building platforms where you can order fashion products. It's amazing what they are doing. So those things can obviously enjoy copyright depending on the jurisdictions that you fall under, as long as it is novel and an inventive step. If you also come up with textiles that have various technological features, you can enjoy patent protection under that. Typically, protection is for 20 years, right? I think in Nigeria, there was somebody who came up a with a an underwear that actually detects if you have cancer as a woman, breast cancer. That's also wearable technology, and you can, enjoy protection for those things. So if you are technically inclined and you're building solutions that are cutting across wearable technology, wristwatches, eyeglasses, those areas, you can also enjoy copyright. You can enjoy patent protection rather. There's trade secrets, and I think that this is one of the areas that we do not talk about enough, because as a Gen Z myself, right, I'm always on TikTok, and you see that a lot of times you see people saying, oh, I will give you a contact to a factory where you can produce your dress, or where I produce my dress. As a designer, as a brand, you should understand that there are certain things that gives you competitive advantage, that it's not public knowledge. A lot of businesses exist because they have certain principles and I don't use the word secrecy, but they have certain information that is confidential to them, right? When it comes to their customer list, there are formulas, obviously, production method, their factory contacts, their manufacturers, how they operate. Those things form your trade secret. However, I think we sort of lost it in a generation where we do not understand that a lot of businesses strive on this secrecy. If Coca-Cola, as old as they spend time so much in the industry, still keeps their recipe for success secret, it's the same thing applicable. If you have a contact that supplies you a particular designs, that's your trade secret. That's what is keeping your business, your staff, those things, in fact, right, I know that in the age of employee-generated content, I still bear in mind that putting your employees out there is also risky, because in the fashion industry, what we also sell is skill. The very fact I can do something. So, for example, I see a popular Hanifa, right? They have their designers posting their technical team on board. It's easy for me to say, oh, I can actually go and coach them and bring them in to create almost the same thing, right? You can also see that internationally, LVMH, every single time we're always hearing about mergers and acquisition. The reason why we see mergers and acquisition is because they are acquiring people who would potentially be people in the value chain who can potentially be their competitors or work for their competitor. So they are acquiring all of those businesses. They are acquiring their manufacturers. They are buying out everybody in the value chain so that they can own that and it can be their exclusive property. We should understand that those things are important. The same thing to confidential information. When you shoot a campaign video and you call a videographer or photographer to shoot those things for you, those are your confidential information. They have no right to post that, and you can only restrict that. Now, the out of all of the IP rights that I've mentioned today, Trade secret and confidential information is the one that you cannot register, but you have to use your contract, your NDAs, right, to protect your service contract. Your IP ownership clause is very important. Your employee contract. Those are things that you have to put into it so that you can protect your trade secret and confidential information, right? Because it gives you a competitive edge. So IP infringement and enforcement. I have mentioned the various ways that you can protect your IP. But one of the ways that I feel like, one of the things that I feel, or stages where I feel that a lot of designers run away is when it comes to enforcing their IP. It is important and I encourage people to use the courtroom of social media. However, there's only so much you can get from there. You can pressure, you can tint the brand, but you cannot stop. And you cannot also get value from them. But where you would get, protection and damages and monetary compensation is the courtroom. So you have to find a way. And how do you do this? The first is obviously serving them a cease and desist letter. That's the very first step to initiating an action. Stop them from using your design. Put a notice, right? Let them know. Let them be aware of the dangers that you have a registered designs, you have a registered article that they are actually infringing on. Put it out there, put a public notice. Then after that, obviously get a lawyer and start your legal action to look at the case and assess it on the probabilities, what exactly exists. Because I can tell you, many designers, many brands have rights. They have the right to go to court. If they don't, also I can also tell you that one of the reasons why we are able to give probability measures is because there are cases that have been handled, and you can see that the judge has actually given judgment in the favor of these brands that have been infringed on. That means that you also can go to court, right? So yes, go to court is important. Start legal action, leverage social media, sure make sure that you are notifying the public that you have protected. There are brands that will put their copyright notice. There are brands that will call you out. There are brands that don't try and act like, oh, there's peace, everything is fine. You will create something else. Always be known for calling out people who infringe on your brand. And the problem with infringement on the African continent is that internationally, when your brand is infringed, right, you would see that they infringe on your brand using your name. So, for example, Gucci, when you see a fake Gucci, you would see that they probably double the G or double the U. So they are not necessarily creating a separate brand. They are basically just diluting the already existing one. So either ways, you can see that the popular brands will enjoy some level of publicity because you can say, oh, this is the fake. However, on the African continent, people infringing on your brand are using a different brand entirely. They are basically saying that is my own. So when I infringe on a Gucci and I call it a different thing, this is me acknowledging that Gucci owns it, but I'm just trying to, sell a fake. However, on the African continent, it's different because they create a brand, right? And they are claiming ownership. This is my idea. This is my own, and I'm selling it. They have a separate brand. Maybe, for example, my name, I'm a popular designer, Bernice Asset. They would not use Bernice Asset. They would call their brand name and then say that they are the owners of those brands. So it's quite different. So that's why it is important for you to call it and register it. Many of times we see people fighting for brands that is not registered. If you do not have any registration, you do not have intellectual property protection, except it's something that falls within the jurisdiction of copyright. Then also register in the key market. Unlike the EU and other continents, Africa is very different, right? We have different IP offices across board. So for you to enjoy protection, you have to protect in each market. IP laws are territorial. What that means is that once I protect myself in South Africa, I am not protected in Ghana. It means I have to go to Ghana to register. right? I have to go to Nigeria to register. So the first things first is identify key markets that you play in, where your customers are, and quickly start looking for ways to register. But thankfully, we have certain regional applications called the ARIPO and the OAPI. ARIPO is basically the same thing. That's African Regional Intellectual Property Protection Organization. The OAPI is the French interpretation of that. What that means is you file a single application and you're protected in multiple countries, while you file a simple registration and you're protected in the French-speaking area of Africa. Now, the problem that we have is that we do not have top markets on the African continent signed to this regional IP system, which poses a lot of problems. Stock markets, talk about South Africa, right? They're not signed to this regional, so you have to still go to South Africa to register. Same with Nigeria. Nigeria is also a top market. You have to go to Nigeria to register. Now, the problem also with the ARIPO system is when you do not have a business in a member country. So, for example, you are in Nigeria trying to register a Nigerian fashion brand trying to register in this part of Africa using the ARIPO method. You would have to register a business in a member state. And member states like Kenya or Ghana, if you do not have a company registered there, it will be difficult to file. Which of course brings me to a very important aspect that I'm always passionate about, always pushing for. There is a need for policy advocacy. There is need for the fashion industry to come together to advocate for all of these things. Because if you're a brand, if you think about it, how much are you going to spend on ARIPO and OAP if we had a unified system? Or better still, the top markets in Africa are also signed under this application. It will be easier. And that's why we should also be excited about the AFTA. That's the Africa Free Trade Continental Trade Agreement, rather, that allows for one market. That's why we should also looking at how they can unify our IP offices so that we can file with one application and you get protected all over Africa. Okay, so next, I think we'll come to the end, towards the end, rather. So there's the IP tips for designers. Always use document your processes, right? Your Instagram page. If you make it private, you can make it private, post your pictures because Instagram has timestamp of when it was created. You send yourself an email, document your creative work. Always document it, have dates on your sketches. That's like the easiest way that you can actually do that. Also work with a fashion-focused IP lawyer. Look for a lawyer that has a bias in the fashion industry because I can tell you for a fact, it is really not easy going through the rigors of registration, identifying the IPs that you have, looking through your brand and your brand elements to say this is what you need to protect. So those are very important. Always work with a lawyer. Get engaged for all of the collaborations, even informal ones. Find a way. Get people to sign. I tell people, work with people that you can sue. And I mean this in a very basic manner. Work with people that you can sue. If you're going to be producing your products at a popular market where you're just working and then you see a tailor to produce, to be honest, when it's time to bring in the law, right, you have to get the address. Sometimes they don't even have a location. Sometimes they don't even have money. If you want to come to court, you should be seeing somebody that can actually pay you, right? So it's important that you work with people that have processes around their way of doing it. Work with manufacturers that you trust, that has something to lose when you call them out. If you work with people that easily, they don't care, they're not even on social media, right? I mean, they don't even know what's happening, they don't even know what IP infringement is. You most likely be wasting your time. So as a brand designer, I know that this can be expensive. Try as much as possible to work with people that have something to lose from your collaboration. It's easier to enforce it, right? And also have conversations, talk to people before you enter into a collaboration, whatever it is. It might seem as a good deal. Have setting clear terms, even if it is not something that's elaborate as a contract, the basic to-dos that you have of the business, terms and conditions. I don't want this, I don't want that, I want this, I want that. Things that you care about, right? State it there. Also register your designs very early. Register your trademark early. Many times I see on the African continent, people wait till when they're about to lose their business. People wait when to wait for when there is a competitor. I can tell you that the African market is very open, and the foreigners internationally are coming into the continent to invest. They can easily, there are no restrictions, very strict restrictions that they can actually afford, right? To registering their trademarks, their IPs, and everything like that. So what that means is that you have to be proactive, because somebody internationally can easily file their trademark across board because they have the finances. While you in your fashion house in Ghana, you most likely can think about registering in a different country. So think about it, register early, protect your brand as early as possible. Educate your team on the importance of intellectual property. Let them know what that is, right? Have contracts. Let them know that by the virtue of the fact that they work for you, every design that they create belongs to the business. We have issues of who owns this, who owns this. I came up with this, I worked with this. There's also you understanding the difference between being a tailor and a fashion designer. Sometimes people are only paying you for the technical skills that you're bringing, and that is cutting the dress and sewing the thread. You are not exactly the creative there. You are just probably, I like to use the word laborer, right? So be sure to identify the role that you're playing with, you're playing in or on, basically, in that particular transaction. Avoid delaying registration, like I said. Always have written contracts. Always write down something, right? Don't post your unprotected work online. Make sure that everybody who is working with you is assigning rights to you. They are basically saying, I have worked for you, even if it's a commission work. If you're commissioning somebody else to work on it, make sure that they are assigning that right to you, because once you commission somebody else to interpret your ideas, like I said at the beginning of the webinar, it becomes theirs, because IP does not protect the idea, right? Do not assume that you own IP because you're the one that thought about it. Many people are thinking that across that line that you not even imagine. So always confirm who owns the IP sources. There are a lot of IP national to study and see this. This all published guides. They have a lot of webinars by the Fashion Law Institute. There is also the upcoming learning webinars that we have. This webinar is also one thing I know that I don't know about ICT, but I'm sure that they will want to keep this going to educate people on their brands, right? There's also you joining communities and a lot of advocacy groups so that you are aware of what is happening in the space. That would be everything on protection of your brand through IP laws that exist. Thank you so much for your time.
Whoa, drum rolls. Thank you so much, Bernice. Oops. My daughter is filled up already, as you can see. Thank you so much for taking us through this beautiful session. It was really quite informative, and honestly, I've picked a lot. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audience have done the same. So yeah, I can see Temitope already doing what I wanted to say. So how do you feel about this session? Let's even start with that. I know you have a lot of questions, and while you are getting your questions ready, how do you feel about the session? What do you think? What was your aha moment? Mine is getting to know that there is a way I can protect my intellectual property on budgets. Because I know that that would be that was one of the things that came to my mind during your session when we were like, so as someone who is quite at the rudimental stage, how am I going to protect my properties? Let's say I don't really have the money, I don't really have a lot of financial backings. how am I going to go about it? So, but yeah, I think you addressed that. So it's possible that beyond registration, there are other there are other acceptable means you can use to protect your designs. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, someone said written contracts. I thought I have protected my brands, but I haven't done that. I love that realization. Thank you so much for the feedback, everyone. It's question time. Bernice wants to take your question, and we would love to hear your questions. This session has reduced my ignorance to almost zero. Beautiful. Thank you, Temitope. Thank you so much, Bernice. Of course, they are confirming it was an amazing session and I have learned a lot. And while they are getting their questions ready, I think I have one or two questions because so there is this story that two friends we are working towards a project together. And at the end of the day, the project did not hold a passion project. One was an illustrator, then the other one a designer. At the end of the day, the project did not go on again, and they parted ways. So along the line, or after some years, the illustrator now discovered that the designer had used most of her concepts, most of her sketches to develop works, and she's even catching out from it. So in this case, now there was no protection. There was no. It was more of a collaborative effort by both of them to bring out a good piece, but there was no funding and they couldn't go on with it. But along the line, someone else, that's one of, let's call the person Prudence. Prudence now used Goodness's sketches to develop, to run her designs, I mean, and even market them. If you, as Prudence, what am I supposed to, how do I go about this? Do I need to go and sue the person that used my idea to design?
Yes,
How do I
yes,
go
yes.
about
So we get this a lot in the fashion industry where people come together and create some. But I always like to clear that your fashion illustration, your sketches enjoy copyright already because you have interpreted the idea you have in your mind. So who owns the copyright now would have to see the measure of work, but the person who interpreted that, and that's the person who drew out the designs, usually is the author of that particular creative work. So the person can actually sue for copyright infringement. Very possible.
Wow, great. Thank you so much for that response. Like, oh, it was even possible. I didn't know it was going to be possible because, of course, I've not registered this. And thank you so much for capturing that. Wow. All right, great. So we have a question here from Xiaomi. She said, please, how to protect these models? How do I protect these models generated by artificial intelligence?
So the law generally is the law does not recognize copyright for artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence cannot own copyright, cannot own intellectual property, right? Cannot be an original author, right? Also, the work that you generate through using artificial intelligence would depend on what your contribution was to that work. It would depend on what your prompting was, right? So if you go to, for example, ChatGPT and say, oh, generate a design that XYZ, XYZ, usually it would be using, I mean, the already existing work. It's going to be a work of you came up with the idea and artificial intelligence came up with it. However, artificial intelligence cannot be given protection. You cannot also, right, go and claim copyright for something that was generated by. Except, of course, you can prove that what you imputed there was sort of unique and something that is, nobody else would think about, really. But really and truly, it will be difficult to prove that. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, a lot of the courts internationally and in Africa are very quiet on who owns IP. But we know that technology cannot be given IP ownership, the human effort and inputs, but to what extent? So we do not really exactly have any legislation on that that talks about that. So, but it
Thank you
should be
so much.
originally.
Thanks a lot for that brilliant response. So we have another question here. A lot of them are coming in. So if you still have your question and it is not in the chat box, you are shooting yourself in the leg. Just feel free to drop your questions. Bernice obviously is loaded to answer every question. So throw it at any angle you want. We are ready. So Ephraim is asking, he says, please, is registration of business name or LLC, I think that's limited liability company, as good as trademarking a name?
Okay, so that's a very, very important question, right? So your company registration is just company registration. What that means is that you are only informing the government that you operate a business under a particular entity. It does not give you ownership to that name. For example, if you go to any company house to register a name, Benny's Ascent Limited, if somebody comes and says they are Dennis, that's like you change the B in my name to D, company house is still going to register it. Because, I mean, except of course, maybe it is a very popular trademark, that we know that if you are trying to vary, but even at that, you cannot say that a company registration gives you ownership. The only thing that gives you ownership is registering with the intellectual property office. Simple. So whether you register a company or not, you just have a certificate of registration and incorporation. And the thing is that you don't also need a registration to own IP, depending on what the laws are. You don't need a company registration, except of course maybe you're trying to do the ARIPO that you have to register there. Sometimes trademark can exist on its own without necessarily having a limited liability company to back it up, right? So the truth is your registration doesn't give you any sort of ownership. Only trademark registration, only IP registration gives you exclusive rights and ownership rights.
Wow, thank you so much. A lot of scenarios were just playing through my mind. Thanks a lot for the response, and I am sure clarity was really given with that. So we have another question. Adeniji is asking a very important one. She said ASC is a fashion clothing, styling, and modeling brand. What is the best protection I can give it? Or will I have to trademark all of the sectors differently? So she runs a modeling, she runs the styling, and yeah, a clothing brand. And she's asking what is the best protection to give the brand.
Yeah, so you have to register in every class that you play in. So we have people who are, multi-talented. They want to do different things. They're sewing, like ASC, sewing, styling. So as long as you are doing all of those services, you would have to register in the fashion brand. You have to register in the modeling area. You have to register if your fashion brand has a school, you have to register in education, right? If you're now selling toilet papers, you have to register in those sectors. You have to continually register. Fashion brands that sell shoes, earrings, jewelries have to register in all of those classes as they expand. Because you have a trademark in the fashion class doesn't mean that you already will be protected in the beauty sector. You have to be registered across classes, and they are all independent registration on the African continent, except of course sometimes they tell you to include the classes so that it's easier, but usually they are all just independent filing. They're treated as one right. So yeah. Well, you've protected your brand in a way under CAC, so you've protected yourself. So if you register under the CAC, right, and register a limited company, you are protected in terms of the fact that your liability is limited, right, and you have a separate entity. But when it comes to ownership of the brand name, it's quite difficult. You can't. In fact, I would add that if you have a trademark registration, you can send your trademark registration to the CAC to actually stop or to remove a particular company. Many foreign companies have done that. Once you register in your trade, once they find an infringing brand, for example, Dior, and I go and register Dior, right? And they find out, they most likely would send a letter informing that they already have trademark with the registry and no other business in Nigeria can bear that particular name, especially when we are even in the same industry or close to it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that brilliant response. So we'll just run it up. I think we have another question from Doris, and we'll take the Doris question. She's asking, if one has a registered trademark and another person in a different, okay, sorry, let me start afresh. Let me start from the beginning. I think I missed some part of it. Please, what is the registration process for ARIPO? I think that's Africa Regional Intellectual Property Organization. So maybe we'll take that, then we'll go over to our next question. Just asking what the registration process is like for the Regional Intellectual Property Organization.
So they all have their IP offices. So you have to have a company in a party state, that means a country that is a party to that particular treaty, right? So I know that Ghana and some other English-speaking country, Nigeria is not part of them, right? So you have to register Kenya, for example. You register in Kenya, then you file. So you must have a company in that region or amongst the member state companies. Once you have a company, then obviously you can run a search. After the search, you file for, and it's free, then you file for the trademark, and after that, they will accept it and scrutinize and send it to the various countries that are part of it. So that is protected in that. So that it's not that easy, but I know that once you start, and then sometimes when you want to now get register a company, you have to add that sometimes when you want to register a company, you would obviously need a business permit, or there will always be, because you're a foreigner. For example, South Africa, you have a business permit, and for it's quite difficult. So hello, goodness.
Okay, I can hear you now. I think there was a network glitch. Sorry about that. So, thank you so much for that response. I think I have a funny one here. Adeniji is saying, I have been deceived. I thought I have protected my brand with CAC. With that crying emoji. So it's just a name securing. I don't own it. Sorry. Oh, Adeniji, sorry about that. So you've known the right thing to do, and we expect you to do the right thing. So we have a brilliant question here. Um, Doris is also asking, if one has a registered trademark and another person in a different country infringes on one's IP rights, what courts or country can one go for a legal redress? What will be the governing law in this case? Is it the laws of one's country or another? Brilliant.
Okay, so it is the country where the infringement is taking place, because that's obviously where you have rights. So if, for example, you register in South Africa and then you also registered in Ghana and somebody in Ghana is infringing on your rights, then you have to go to court in Ghana. It's easier that way. So the courts where you have that, the country where you have the protection is where that you sue from. I hope that answers.
Thanks a lot, Bernice. Hi guys. So I think we have a lot of questions to address. So we're going to pick it. Okay. I think I know what to do. So if you still have more questions, drop it in the chat box. If we are unable to ask your question, answer your question, and it was not addressed on the call, we'll try to provide an answer to your question post, like that's after the session, and we would send it to you, and also maybe drop it on our CIP network. We'll get to that. So thank you so much. And I think Blessing is asking, can we get the link for IP registration? Do you have a website in case we need your legal service?
Oh, okay. So do I talk about that, or goodness, you want to handle? Because I know that we already have something in store for everybody to be able to.
Okay. So, but as for the link for IP registration, is this something that can be available after the session?
Oh, yes, definitely. We can. We can, right? So we can.
Thank you. We'll see to that after the session. And if it's possible, of course, we'll send it down to everyone. So we'll have more questions coming in. Someone is asking, you mentioned something about registration of taglines. How does this work?
Oh, okay, so taglines. Taglines are sayings, let's just say, that is peculiar to your brand, right? So there's a particular brand that has just do it. That's their tagline. For Fashion Law Institute, for example, our tagline is Africa's first Fashion Law Institute, basically. So anything you want to, have a following to your brand, you have to protect it. Just do it is protected. You can't be working in fashion industry and say, oh, I want to just do it there. You already know who owns that. So it's a saying or a phrase that's associated with your brand, right? It's anything that you easily can say, oh, once somebody says that, I know that it's affiliated to a particular brand and it's protected. I know that sometimes it can be very long, but that particular word is protected or phrase is protected under trademark because it can also fall under what you use as your source identifier.
Thanks a lot. So I think this should be our second to the last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Odunayo, sorry we missed your question the first time. We are going to take it this time. It's your turn. So I have a fashion brand. I am yet to register under CAC. So the issue here is that there is someone using a similar name to my brand. The website has been taken by someone, but the brand name still stands. Can I use my brand name and then use something different for the website? Is that clear or I should
Okay,
go over it
so
again?
another thing, yes, it's clear, and I think that we get this issue a lot.
Yeah.
So you should know that the fashion industry, by implication, by every indication, is international. So you can be in your small village in wherever you are and still be servicing clients in the US, in Europe, and all of that. So that's one of the reasons why trademark is important, right? So what that means is that you can't just be picking out names from anywhere. You have to conduct search. Except, of course, maybe you want to take the risk because I know that there are some times when you have a small brand here in Nigeria and people send cease and desist to Nigeria to say that they already have a trademark. And I can tell you that from my experience, a lot of international brands, foreign brands that you don't even know of. So another thing I would have to say is that there are many fashion brands, but they are not popular. They might be manufacturers that don't need to even be on social media, but they have a trademark. So I tell people always conduct your search and protect your name first. If you've conducted search and you see that somebody else is using it, or you've looked around and you know that this person has whatever, it is good to change your name almost immediately to something else. Immediately. It is also very easy to change your name when you're a smaller brand than to do that when you are popular. I have clients who have over 100K followers on Instagram, and the issue is their brand name is not theirs. Maybe it has been registered by an international brand. And because once you're growing your following, you're already stepping outside the borders of Nigeria or Ghana or Africa. So you see that you have to now have clients in the US. So you have to start looking at which other brands will like, even if you don't even run a search, by popularity check. You are seeing that there's a popular brand called Chanel, and you want to also be Chanel. Is you have to you have to read the room, honestly. So for me, right, it's easy, run a search in Nigeria. If you're still a designer just doing couture services, sewing services, you can try. But if you're looking to build a global brand, right, those are things you have to look at. Run a search, look at it. Run a search with IP offices. Also on Google, check who is using what name and see if you can change it. Also look for names that are not descriptive, that are not generic. We have a lot of fashion brands using generic names. There is no reason why your brand should be clothing or fashion or something. If you check, LVMH doesn't have fashion. Check popular brands in Nigeria, for example. They run away from clothing. They run away from what's like luxury, fashion, beauty. You have to have unique names, what trademark protects is unique names, not generic names. The only time you can protect a generic name is if you can prove that you have enjoyed the popularity to the point that they know you as that particular, name, but it's really difficult.
Wow, thank you so much, Bernice. Thank you for this brilliant question and answer session. Whoa, I got a lot of value, and I think we've covered basically most of the questions. In fact, if not all the questions, and it's really a beautiful thing to do with our time. Thank you so much, Bernice, for the response, and thank you everyone for joining us. I am sure you have got so much value. I'm sure that you've learned a lot and you really don't sit on these learnings because I think I like how Benita used the word. She said your brand name is not for your fancy bags, your logo is not for your emails, it's not for your fancy bags, it's not for your social media VP. You need to secure your properties, and because they speak not just about your brand but about the brand owner. That's your own personality, so you don't casualize those assets. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. It was such a pleasure to have everyone on the call. And like I said, this is our maiden edition, and expect more BlueBox sessions in the coming future. And of course, we call it a wrap. So once again, can you do me a favor by typing a thanking Bernice in the chat box? Just tell us what you think about her teaching. Let's just give her a thunderous, I would have said a standing ovation, but it's a virtual call. So let's give her a emoji ovation. Let's tell her how we feel about the session. Is it insightful? Is it brilliant? Is it beautiful? Yeah, thank you so much. Nima said mercy. Mercy means thank you. Yeah. Yeah, she's such a sweet angel. Aww. Alrighty, thank you so much, guys, for joining this session. We have a lot in
Yeah.
stock for you, and of course, we won't let you go without you knowing our next steps. And of course, I my colleague is already on the call, and she'll be running us through our next steps. ICT Africa Creative Innovation Practice, we have a lot in stock for you, and we can't wait for you to start leveraging all of the things we have in stock for you. But before we leave, I would want us to share your feedback about the session. Let's know how you feel about today's session. Let's know what you think about today's session. We want to know what went well. We want to know what can be improved upon for future sessions. And so for that, there would be a link that would be dropped in the chat box. Please click on the link. It's not going to take you more than 2 minutes to fill out the form. Or you can also scan the barcode, the share your feedback barcode on the screen to let's get your feedback. So for next steps, I'll be handing over the mic to my colleague, MM18. Hi, MM.
Hi, goodness. Thank you so much for a great moderation. Thank you so much. Thank you very much as well, Benis, for that facilitation. It was truly a mine of knowledge. Thank you so much. And to everyone that joined in, thank you. It was very interesting seeing us share our insights and learning points on the chats. We hope that this would only be the start of much more growth for every business that has joined in. Yes, just like as Goodness mentioned, please feel free to share with us your feedback. And we can only do better when we know how this has served you. Hi, Timmy Topper, thank you so much. So let us know your feedback on today's session, what went great, things you would like us to improve on. Yes, Sharaz, definitely you get the recordings as well as the slides of this session as well for your continuous learning. And then also the link to join the community. Please use the sign up form that's been shared in the chat to join our community. So this is not a one-stop shop. After this, we still want to offer value, provide opportunities to learn, to engage, to grow as well. And then, like we've said in our communication with you, I know some of us have asked more specific questions regarding the legal aspect of our business. So you get access to a free consultation with Venice. So you get that one-to-one legal coaching support. So look out for that information from us in your email. So this is not the end. There's still much more value. And then you get to have Venice to yourself. So look out for that. So please ensure to join the group so you are aware of the updates, the opportunities that we share, and then also be on the lookout for your email for the next steps regarding the legal free consultation that you would receive. All right. So next, like we said, the CIP, the Creative Innovation Practice by ICT Africa, we're just aimed at nurturing creative talents across Africa. So regardless of sector, whether it be fashion, music, film, the aim is to support the creative talent through networking, through funding, through learning opportunities like this, and through research. Yes, the meetup definitely is open to all. So every creative within Africa, yes, is open to all. So it's not just tied to fashion. Um, so with that, this is the first one of the first initiatives we have, which is the BlueBox sessions. So again, to corroborate your question, Timitope, there will be future BlueBox sections. So whether it be about jewelry making, about storytelling as a creative, many other topics as well. So definitely it's open to participants across sectors. So one teaser we have for you all to keep you excited about what's to come next. So we do have a paid boot camp coming up for fashion entrepreneurs. So this for African designers, brand owners, creatives. This is an opportunity to learn how to master your business growth strategies, how to build a brand identity that stands the test of time, network with other industry leaders as well, and definitely meet other people within the community. So this is just to tease us on what's to come. And again, please join the community. Look out for your emails where we'll be sharing more information about this opportunity and many, many more to come. So just before we wrap up, just want to check if we have any other questions, any other thing that would like to clarify. So the links to join the community, the sign up form is in the chat, as well as the feedback form. We look forward to receiving your responses as well. Can see a message. All right. So Hawa, please forgive me if I didn't pronounce your name well. Benice, you'll be able to contact with Benice in the free legal consultation that you would have access to, and definitely can move on from there. All right. Okay, so I believe that we do not have any more questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for your engagement in the chats. And we look forward to meeting with you real soon and offering much more value over the course of the year as well. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day and a great weekend ahead.
Before you do that, please, we would love to take the screenshots. Can you turn on your video if you can, so that we'll capture the beautiful moments? Turn on your videos if you can, so that we can just take screenshots. And yeah, thank you so much. I can see the videos are coming up. Thank you so much.
So, Agnes, can you stop sharing your screen as well?
Oh, really? I'm sorry. Done. Ladida, are we good? Oh, yeah. Thank you, Adeniji. Good to have you, Ephraim. Good to have you, Jane. Good to have you, Temitope, Jane. Thank you so much, Francis, for the amazing work. We are grateful. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining this session. We hope to see you in our Creative Innovation Network. We hope to see you in our we hope to see you in other BlueBox sessions, and of course, the paid webinar. Mark your calendars. Thank you so much all for joining, and see you next time. Bye. Thank you, Bernice. Thank you, Passion Law
Thank you,
Institute.
Bye. Bye, Emma. Bye,
Bye,
Francis.
everyone.